Well folks, it's been a minute since I last did a signature bonus build in Gran Turismo 7, and this is actually a car which I've had on the docket for quite a while, one of the earliest builds actually, and this kind of goes back to the earlier days of not being anywhere near as powerful, anywhere near as quick, more something that's just for the fun of it, something that uses your imagination a bit more. And the idea behind it, and some of you will probably guess this from the name and certainly from the visuals and the combination of both, it's a what-if build which taps directly into my fandom of a particular car from Gran Turismo's history, a legitimate dream car of mine, the Volkswagen Beetle RSi. This is a reimagining of what could have been if Suzuki had done something like that, but for the Swift. So this is a Swift RSi, if you will. So the wider arches, the silver paint, the Oz wheels, it's all a direct reference to said Beetle. And of course, even though the Beetle ended up being basically like a teaser for the Golf R32, really, this one not so much in that sense, of course, and unfortunately you can't fit this for four-wheel drive. That would be an awesome conversion to have. In terms of the visuals, you do need the wide body on this one. Of course, the rest of the visuals, you can grab the livery, which I did. It's a pretty simple one anyway. As far as the point level, you can see it's not overly high, 483. It is on comfort tyres, the comfort softs, which it comes with. I did fit some hard ones, but you don't necessarily need to go that crazy with it, so I've left it on the comfort softs. Again, for the realism side of things, you've got the sports air filter. I have fitted all of the different exhausts, but I would recommend not doing any of that, because even though, of course, this isn't a real car, so you could go for whatever power you want, I wanted it to be about 220 horses, and it sits perfectly on that with the standard exhaust. So, like I said, you could fit it if you want to, but I've left it standard for the visuals and to keep it to 220. As far as the brakes, we've got the sports pads fitted, stage 1 weight. As far as the club sports section, I believe, if I just double check, yeah, it's got the high lift S cams rather than the standard ones, so of course that overrides these ones in the club sports section anyway. We've got the sports clutch and flywheel, the sports discs as well, stage 2 weight. The power restrictor and the ballast. As far as the semi-racing stuff, like I said, you don't need the silencer there. I've gone for the low RPM turbo, so you get that nice low-end torque and a quick thump, a nice little serving of power immediately out of corners. The fully customised computer, the limited slip diff on this one, stage 3 weight as well. You may have noticed I haven't upgraded the transmission. Again, I wanted that more realistic feel of the standard box, plus the ratios are still good enough for a 220 horsepower car. Likewise with the racing silencer, like I said, you don't need it. The manifold, though, I have fitted, so if I recall, I think that makes a slight difference to the sound, as well as obviously to the power. We've got the fully customised suspension, which of course is overkill really, but that was to kind of tie into the roots of the Beetle being sort of a road-going cup car with some hints of DTM or rally history there as well. And then, as far as the extreme stuff, to the surprise of no one, I have fitted it with the steering angle adapter. Of course, that is mostly for drifting, but with a front-wheel drive car, it helps with the turn-in as well. And for the ultimate stuff, like I said, we've got the S cams. So it's not that expensive of a build. The Swift isn't an expensive car to begin with, and the parts aren't that expensive either. Of course, there are certain things here which you could either change for certain events or certain requirements, like the tyres, for example, which will change the points. Obviously, future updates will change the point level as well. And certain things, because, you know, it's not a real car, you could take creative liberty with, probably most notably the exhaust, or perhaps the choice of turbo. So if you want to go more powerful, then of course you could. But like I said, I wanted this car to be squarely in the 220 horsepower region. And as far as the weight, I took a bit more of a liberty there, because of course this wouldn't be quite this lightweight in real life, but I envisioned it as being kind of like the Beetle in terms of having that carbon fibre, more bare bones interior, with more of that kind of race car for the road imagery and vibe to it, which doesn't really make any sense for a Suzuki Swift to have carbon fibre, but indulge me. You know, like I said, it's just inspired by a car that I love, basically. So we've got the comfort softs fitted. For the suspension, slight difference between the front and the back, 102 front, 105 rear. As far as the anti-roll, that's on 4, as you can see, 30 and 40 for the dampers, 2.05 on the springs. For the toe, or not for the toe, for the camber I should say, 0.5 front and rear. The toe, of course, on a front-wheel drive car, I do tend to get fairly aggressive with to really help that turn in, especially between the toe and the diff, really. Those are the two biggest ways that you can make an immediate difference on pretty much any front-wheel drive car. Then the toe in particular is point in, English is 0.10 in even, and then 0.5 out on the back, which on most cars would make it a bit too tail happy, but for this one it almost acts like a bit of four-wheel steering, because it helps that back end to kind of get around the corner a bit better. rather than having that traditional understeer and torque steer, which most front-wheel drive chassis tend to have. As far as the diff, I've opted for 40, 20 and 40. Particularly with a car like this, everyone will probably have their own preference of what they prefer. I wanted it to feel realistic, but still quick enough through corners that it feels believable and fun at the same time. And that is what I've come to, which I quite like. As far as the adjustments for ballast and all that kind of stuff, I've actually added weight to this one. That's why I made the weight so low, so that I can add the ballast and then pretty much put it wherever I want to get a lot more over the back end. So we've got 81 kilos. There's no real reason to have it on 950. If you want to have more weight to make it a bit more realistic, I quite like the idea of it weighing 999 kilos, kind of Sesto Elemento style, but again, that's down to you. Depends what point level you want it to be at as well. Maybe that might get you down around 475. That could come in handy for something. But I've got it on, as I said, 81, put that all the way to the back. Not entirely necessary on a front-wheel drive car, but again, just more so the OCD thing, to get it a bit close to the middle. As far as the ECU, we've got 99%, so just a fraction down to knock it off to 220 horses. No adjustable downforce, at least as far as the visuals that I've got. The low RPM turbo, of course, and then all the stuff down here, aside from the silencer, which, as you can see, is standard. And if I run through them here, you can see the different changes. Incidentally, if you put the sports one on, that pretty much gives you Beetle RSi power. So if you do want to do it, that might be the one to go for. And then, of course, over here, you can see all of the other stuff. So, as always, it is time to jump out to the track so I can show you what the car can do in practice, give you an idea of the kind of lap times you can get out of it, etc., etc. In terms, first of all, of its laps, it's not the quickest thing around. Of course, on comfort tyres, it's never going to be, but it's a couple of seconds off the pace of the Abarth Cup car, which I did on this same track. That one was slightly higher on points, nearly 500, and that one also had, most notably, the sports hard tyres instead of comforts. So of course that alone makes a pretty big difference. That one was more of a full-on cup car build, whereas this one of course is somewhere between cup car and road car. So I'm pretty happy with that. I feel like this should be slower than something like that. That feels appropriate. It's not like the Beetle versus Beetle Cup car where the RSi used to be pretty much always quicker than the Cup because it had the four-wheel drive advantage and it was more powerful. This feels more appropriate to be slower than that one, at least in my opinion. So, like I said, this is a very self-indulgent tune for me, just something that I personally really like the idea of. I always have liked the idea. If you do decide to use the build, I hope you have fun with it first and foremost. If you happen to use it for some lower level events, maybe some front-wheel drive events, of course, have fun with it. And of course, I'll see you sooner than later with more special projects in the proper full-size pack. I'm probably, for full exposure, going to go maybe into the start of November for the next special projects, because usually I would do it in the same month as the update, but I think we might get an official Polyphony update at the end of November, if we do get one in that month. So rather than having an update and then special projects and then an empty month until the next update, I wanted to have it more so that special projects is in between the two, so it feels a bit more spaced out and we've got something to do at least. So that's the rough plan for the next projects pack. Of course, I'll see you then for that, and enjoy the build. But for now, thanks for watching.